It's nice to have your company today. And writing in the Mail this week, columnist Clover Stroud has been talking about her ability to bounce back from life's knockbacks. Now, she says a recent £11,500 bill she received for a burst pipe which flooded her kitchen made her think all I wanted to do was hide under the duvet and wait until a knight in shining armour could ride to my rescue. But I knew what it was that I truly needed, and that was resilience. So, do you have resilience? Do you have the bounce-back ability if you get life's knocks and bumps?
I used to have massive bounce-back ability when I used to ignore everything. I used to seriously put my head in the stand and not worry about anything and kind of just go like that when real problems happened. And then obviously you can't go through life doing that because that's really immature. And I decided, because I took it to the extreme, I swept everything under the carpet, I needed to address problems because that was the best way of coping with things in reality. And now I can't cope with anything. And now, I mean, I'll give you an example. My nan has got pneumonia and she's in hospital at the moment, but when she first went in, we had a phone call saying that she was in intensive care, and you know, we really thought it was the end of Nan for that day. And everyone thought I'd be fine, and they kind of gave me all the information straight, like I could take it on the chin, and I completely crumbled.
Where before you would have been able to maybe deal with that?
Before I did, I had exactly the same scenario with my grandfather, and I dealt with the doctors and the nurses and organised home help and everything, and was completely focused. And just because I just got busy and didn't really focus on what was really happening, and it was afterwards that I sort of fell apart. But during the crisis, I was enormously resilient. But I can't, I'm not at all now.
Now you've changed. But Carol, I would think you're very resilient, aren't you? You seem a very strong person to me.
Well, I just think that you have to be realistic about stuff. You can't bury your head in the sand. You have to deal with it. You know, life is tough. And you just have to face up to things sometimes. And when something really, really terrible happens, something really, really awful, like for me, the worst thing that ever happened to me was my mum dying. And I did deal with it because luckily I had some time off because this show finished just before she died, and then for the following 9 months we weren't doing anything. So I did kind of hide away, and I didn't go out and I didn't really talk to anybody, and I just felt like I needed to wallow and I needed to get the grief out, or the worst of it. You know, it went on for about 3 years. But you know, my sister was completely different to me. You know, she carried on working, and she just forged ahead and thought that she'd dealt with it all, and she hadn't, and she did, and she couldn't cope with it, and she did crumble. So
do you think if the show had been on the air then, could you have actually come to work? Could you have got through the day?
I probably could have, because I did the whole time she was sick, and, you know, people said to me, look, you go into a parallel universe, you just do what you have to do, and you do it. It would have been difficult, I wouldn't have been able to have spoken about it, but you know, and I still get quite upset about it now. But at the time, I think I got over it much quicker than my sister, because I did allow myself to really, really deal with it, think about it, and wallow, and, you know, write about it as well. So
I think the thing is, you sometimes don't know how resilient you are until you're put to the test, do you? And I would say that I'm not a great... I don't cope well in stressful situations. I wouldn't put myself in stressful situations or a stressful job, or... and yet when my dad got Alzheimer's, which was very stressful for the whole family, I became quite resilient. You know, I faced it, and I got all the information, and I surprised myself, actually, because I thought I'd be a wreck.
And it's different levels of stress, because to some people, doing a television show would be stressful. Do you know what I mean? So it's how different people perceive things. But I think what you said is really true. And obviously, grief is like a completely normal emotion that you have to deal with. But sometimes life throws something else at it, like sort of like a depressive illness or something, which took away my coping instinct for a long, you know, for quite a long time in areas that I may have coped. But I found that looking back over my life, which I've been in sort of quite a reflective mood recently, and sort of looking back and actually surprising myself at how resilient that I had been in lots of situations, because I'm somebody that doesn't cope with minor stresses. Like if it's pathetic really, if I go home and I'm really tired and the kitchen's a mess, I can burst into tears in that, even though I'm not exactly the tidiest person in the world. I can actually burst into tears at the fact that my kitchen's a mess.
Yeah, and you know, has those little everyone things has those
little things. But one of my main examples is that when Louis, who's now 9, was born, and he was diagnosed with Hirschsprung disease, which is a thing where the nerve endings in the bowel don't form properly. And anyway, it was a long process. But he was seriously ill, and he had 2 near-death experiences. But at no point during that time did I ever really think that I was going to lose him. And it's funny looking back, because if someone was telling me the story about somebody, you know, like as if somebody was telling me their story and it was me, I would be going, oh, I wouldn't have been able to cope with that.
Well, you see, I think that, listening to you, I think I couldn't cope
But I
with
did
that,
cope,
but
and of
you
course
do,
you have to cope, because who else is going to
kicks
cope?
in as well, because it's such a dramatic situation. You don't go there to think about the stark reality of it, because it just doesn't bear thinking about. So you just kind of soldier through, don't you?
And it's really, you know, as I say, it has surprised me. And sometimes when I read things about Princess Diana in particular, because she suffered with mental illness, which manifested in different ways to mine, and people sort of often talk about it, critics talk about it as if that was a sign of weakness. But actually, when I look through what I came through, and the fact that I did go to work and that I did look after my children, dealing with it almost crippling mental illness, it's actually made me think, that's actually a sign of strength rather than a sign of weakness.
Yeah, and I think, you know, talking
what I
about
mean?
it as we are now, other people, you know, realise it's something you can talk about. Well, I think you're a pretty resilient lot. It's interesting to think about, though, isn't it?
I still got stressed when I didn't have a Freeview box and I couldn't get my channels.
That's not good. That's not good. I'm feeling your pain. I'm feeling your pain with that one. Well, we'd like to